These are the okay. These
Sorry.
are the these are these decals we put on the inlets for the municipal members. So if you're, I guess the closest municipality as a member is Haverford, they should be on a lot of the inlets there. I don't think we've gotten all of them yet. There's probably over 1,000 inlets in the member municipalities. We've been spending a lot of time with the collaborative, really kind of focusing on, I think it's important to understand, watersheds don't follow political boundaries. And so these municipalities, a lot of them are smaller municipalities, but they really kind of, you know, taken this big step and saying, hey, let's work together. Let's put real money on the line and let's see what we can do to, maximize our resources and really make a difference in our own parks. They're really kind of improving a lot of their own municipal facilities and how we can engage our residents to make a big difference. Like Amy said, the Stormwater Collaborative worked with the Haverford Township EAC to create the Have a Rain Garden program. I think after this fall, we've put in 57 rain gardens on private property. We've now begun a similar program in Upper Darby Township. So we've only managed to get 4 in, but that's a start. So it's really important, for municipalities and for residents in municipalities to really be partners together in trying to solve this problem. We're going to talk sort of a little bit of detail about why stormwater is such an issue, not just ecologically, but also, we didn't have a lot of flooding from this storm, but in August, it was pretty disastrous for us. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. Like Amy said, if you have any questions, put it in the chat. Happy to spend some time afterwards to discuss stuff. So these are just some common scenes that you can see. So this is sort of like a wooded, on this picture over here on the left is a wooded stream, which is, sort of the ideal, probably high quality stream. On the right is what we would see in a lot of, suburban urban areas, a stream that's heavily impacted by uncontrolled stormwater runoff. In the middle, this is a shot of some houses on my street. This is what you see typically in suburbia, right? A lot of lawn. There's some trees in the background. There's the regional rail runs behind my house, and the other side there happens to be about 30 acres of woodland. But the houses don't have any trees, so I like to say we should definitely add a tree to this property. It would look much nicer if they would put a tree in there. So every time I see them, I'm always like, hey, what about a tree? Wouldn't that be nice? So we could, increase some of our tree canopy and add some maybe food sources for local wildlife. So this is what it should look like around here, right? When we think about, what it looked like when, there weren't that many humans living in North America. It was a temperate deciduous forest. And the water cycle works differently in a temperate deciduous forest. If we were outside right now in a dense canopied forest, we would not be getting very wet, right? Because, well, right now we might because there's not many leaves left on the tree. But in the summertime, we wouldn't be because the leaves are going to capture a lot of that rainfall. And then when the sun comes back out, they're going to evaporate it back up in the atmosphere. Then the forest floor is really spongy, right? And so the water that does reach the forest floor is going to be able to soak in and recharge our groundwater supplies. And you're still going to get runoff and heavy rains, but it's not going to be an enormous amount of runoff. And so that's, what our stream channels, were designed by nature to have happen when it rains. But like the song says, right, we paved paradise and we put up a parking lot. And so this is a drone shot that I found. This is Mediaborough in Delaware County. And so there's a lot of what we call impervious surfaces now, right? There's a lot of roads, there's a lot of sidewalks, there's a lot of roofs, there's a lot of parking lots, and there's a lot of grass. And people think, oh, well, it's grass, it's green, it's natural. And they think, oh, it's just the same as, it would have been if it was a forest. And it's really not. A lot of our lawns, we walk on them and we compact the soil, and grass roots don't really grow very deep. And so that creates a lot of compaction in the soil, and it doesn't really allow the water, the rainwater, to soak through as it would have naturally, right? And so it's almost sort of like green asphalt in a sense. I like to tell people, if you go to any athletic field, like if you have kids that play sports or you played sports, they're always, pitched one way or the other, and there's usually storm sewer inlets on the athletic field because that water's not going to soak in, it's going to run off. And so even grass isn't the best situation for stormwater. And you can see there's trees. I mean, Media is a pretty well-treed community, but it's not like a dense canopy like a forest would have. So that impacts, how the water cycle works. And so when water hits these impervious surfaces, the way we've designed our communities, especially ones like inner ring suburbs, like where we all are from, um, there's no stormwater management. They were built way before there was stormwater management. So the water just runs off and it goes into storm sewer inlets, where it goes into storm sewer pipes, where it's directed right to our streams without any treatment. And so there's twofold issues with that. One, whatever it picks up along the way is going to be carried into the stream, whether it's litter, whether it's sediment, whether it's fertilizer. And two, that's a lot of water. It's a huge volume of water you're putting into the stream that wasn't going there when it was a forest. And so that has an impact on our waterways as well. So everyone has a watershed address, right? The land and the water are directly connected. And smaller watersheds are part of larger watersheds. So I just pulled up a quick map I found on the internet. These are the watersheds of Montgomery County. And so this at the bottom, this is Darby Creek. This is where the municipalities I work with are located. And I happen to live in Darby Creek and does sort of have a snippet of Narberth and Lower Merion in it. So, these smaller watersheds feed into bigger watersheds. And when I teach kids, I like to say, eventually it ends up in the ocean. And when you go to the beach in the summer, you're swimming in whatever you put in that stormwater. And they always get kind of grossed out, like, oh my gosh, right? So they're all connected. And so the pollution or the issues you create, right, can be carried far and wide. So the people that live at the top of, say, the Darby Creek watershed, right? This is why it's so important for these municipalities to work together. They impact everyone who lives below them from what happens, how they manage the stormwater runoff. So they're kind of pushing their problems further downstream, and that can have big impacts. Just like people who live at the bottom of the Darby Creek watershed push their problems into the Delaware River, then pushes it downstream into Delaware and the communities downstream. So we all have to kind of realize that our impact can be far reaching from how we manage our stormwater and what we do to try and mitigate it. So this is kind of that pre-development situation that we saw in that picture of the forest, right? So we're getting a lot of evaporation, right? A lot of the rainfall that hits the trees evaporates back in the atmosphere. But really important to understand is we're also getting a lot of infiltration. We're getting not just shallow infiltration into the groundwater, but deep infiltration into the groundwater. And it's that deep infiltration, that water in the ground, that gives flow in our streams when it's not raining out. We call that base flow. And so if we're not putting water back into the ground, we're going to impact how much water's in our streams when it's not raining out. And so the less groundwater we have, the less base flow we're going to have in our streams. And that's going to stress out the aquatic things that live there. And it's going to be problematic. So you can see in the urbanized situation, we're still getting evaporation, right? There's puddles on the roads, there's puddles on my lawn, it eventually soaks in or evaporates if the sun comes back out. But we're getting so much more runoff, whereas before it was about 10% in the forest, now it's about 55%. But also, so that's a lot of water that's going into our waterways. It wasn't going before when it was a forest. But we're also not getting that infiltration into the ground, which is becoming a big concern for that base flow in streams, for that water in the streams when it's not raining out. And what does that mean? So our streams now go from, a little teeny tiny bit of water, like on a regular basis, to like a raging river, right, when it starts to rain out. And that creates a lot of problems, not just ecologically, but it creates a lot of problems for humans, right? We see all these massive flooding issues we have, and it has to do with the fact that we're putting this huge volume of water into our streams really quickly. I mean, that's the goal of stormwater management when homes were built back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and into the 60s, right? Get it away from my property and off my road as quickly as possible and into the stream so I don't have to worry about it. And so this is a quick little map I put together today. This is sort of an average suburban, quarter acre lot type situation with the parcels, the black lines are the parcel lines of the property lines. And the orange is the impervious surface on these lots. And so you can see, some of the lots, it's not too bad, but some of the other ones, they put additions onto their homes or patios onto their homes, or they've made their driveway bigger. It could be upwards of 50% impervious cover. And that pushes a lot of water into our waterways and creates a lot of pollution. And you can see all the impervious surface from just the roads. And that's, really a big issue for stormwater management. So there's been a lot of research that shows the more impervious cover you have in your watershed, right, the more degraded your stream is going to be. They're directly connected. And so if we can do some things to offset the impact of that impervious cover, some things we'll talk about later on about natural stormwater management techniques, then you can help to bring your stream back to a healthier situation, healthier kind of designation. So this is kind of the story, right? This is a story. This is This is a creek that I grew up playing in. This is in the Crum Creek watershed. It's Little Crum Creek. It's in a borough at the very bottom of Little Crum Creek watershed, also at the bottom of the Crum Creek watershed. And so it's in Ridley Park Borough. So this is what it looks like on the top left on like an average sunny day, you know, looking off on this bridge. It's a nice little creek. It's got a lot of crayfish in it. It was fun to play in as a kid, right? And I don't want to call my parents out, but this is my parents' house when it's raining out. So you can see their gutter goes right next to where their driveway is. This was a pretty heavy rainstorm I was out taking a photo of, but you can see the water just rushes off their grass. You can see it kind of coming down from their lawn. Their lawn is sloped towards the front and rushing onto their driveway as well. And then it goes into the street into a storm sewer inlet, right, where it's piped directly into Little Crum Creek, which is right across the street from their house. And so this is a photo during that storm. And it was a heavy storm. It had been raining for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and it was pretty decent, you know, downpour. But you can see it went from this little kind of babbling, nice stream I want to jump in and play in to what looks kind of scary, right? About a half an hour to an hour after I took this picture, notice I'm not standing on this bridge when I took this picture. It topped the bridge and it flooded out that park, which is a common occurrence when you see parks like this along waterways at the bottom of the watershed, right? They have this sort of massive flooding. This creek feeds into a lake that regularly has sediment issues. The borough is constantly trying to dredge it out to keep it a lake because all the sediment from upstream is washing downstream and filling it in. And so it creates a lot of problems. They just recently sunk a lot of money into putting in a new footbridge. This footbridge had been so undermined by so many big storms, it was no longer safe. And so they had to redo the whole footbridge from that large volume of water that was entering it. So this is a fancy graph we call this a hydrograph, but it's a great way to illustrate what we're talking about when we talk about that volume of water entering creeks, right? And so here we have the solid line is like pre-development, right? When it would be like a woodland or just sort of really low density development. I mean, you can see there's more water to start out in the stream because there's more groundwater to feed that stream when it's not raining out. And then you get rain, right? It starts to rain and you have a slow rise, right? And a slow fall. So it's not this sort of sudden flashiness like we think about with a lot of streams around here. And the volume of water under that curve is much smaller. But after development, you see we have less base flow in the creek, right? Just there's not as much groundwater, so there's not as much water in the creek. And then when it rains, all of a sudden, whoosh, right? There's just this raging river that creates this dangerous situation for humans, development, human life. It's not a, you know, it's not a good thing to be around. And there's a very large volume of water under there. So all that water's going into the stream, taking with it a lot of stuff. The volume, water's really powerful. So it starts to chew up the stream banks, it starts to chew up the bottom of the stream, and it pumps a lot of sediment into our waterways, which can create problems for the things that live there. And then this picture is sort of like what we've done development-wise. So here's the natural stream system. It rains, it floods out into the floodplain, it goes back. The stream is what we call sinuous. It goes back and forth and meanders. That's what streams naturally should look like, right? But it's not really suitable for human development. That's kind of not what we want. It's in the way. And so we've straightened a lot of our streams. You know, even on a golf course, the streams don't go back and forth when you think they would, because there's probably a farm one day, and this is kind of hard for farmers to grow their crops if the stream's going meandering back and forth. They probably straightened it at some point. And so when you straighten it and then you build along it and you're putting all of your stormwater into that channel, that stream channel, this is what you end up with, right? Big amounts of flooding. And so these are the problems we're seeing, especially as the climate starts to shift and we don't kind of get normal types of rainfall anymore. It seems like we get these giant gully washers followed by, you know, some storms and another giant gully washer. And that creates a lot of problems for development and what's along the stream. We've also changed stream channels. And if you grow up in a suburban urban area and you see these things, you see the way streams look, that's just how it always looked. And you just think that's what's natural and that's how it should be. But in reality, this is creating degraded systems for us. And we have to rethink these situations. And I know a lot of this is, it could be in someone's backyard, it could be in a public park. We need to really rethink how we are treating our streams and how we look at them. This is a stream. This is a SEPTA trolley stop in Springfield Township. They wanted to make the parking lot bigger, so they paved on top of the stream bank, right? So it's all pitch, so the water runs directly into the stream. And then along the side, since there's nothing to hold the stream bank in place, they had to put this stone there called riprap. This is doing nothing for the aquatic life, right? I took this picture on a snowy day, so there's probably salt running off into the stream. You can see down here, my cursor, here it is. This is a storm sewer outfall from the road, and this is just the bridge. The stream's a little bit, I'm gonna say, abused. It goes a little bit further down, and there's a swim club. Instead of building bridges, when they built the swim club, they just put concrete on the bottom of the creek, and so you drive through the creek twice to get to the swim club. That has a big impact, right, on the pollutants heading to into the waterways and the ability for that stream to be healthy. This is Naylor's Run, which is it starts in Haverford Township and flows down through Upper Darby. And sections of it in Upper Darby back in the 70s were put into a concrete channel, kind of like what you would see at the end of Greece, where they're racing their cars. The concrete channel is one problem, but there's something orange coming out of this outflow pipe. And I want to say, if you ever see a storm sewer outfall that has something coming out of it that's not water, that's a problem, right? We want to make sure no one's dumping. We want to make sure that there's not some sort of illicit discharge, if somebody's putting something in there that you don't see. Which is why for the stormwater collaborative, we label our inlets, right? Rainwater only drains to creek. A lot of people still think they go to a treatment plant, and they don't, and that's a big problem. This picture, this is also a section of Naylor's Run. This is a creek that's underground. And so there's a lot of streams that they were in the way, they were a nuisance. We've just put them in pipes underground, built on top of them, and hope for the best, really, right? And this picture on the right, this is a park that has been mowed to the edge of the stream. Grass is a terrible vegetation to have along a stream bank. It does nothing to benefit aquatic life. It does nothing for the temperature of the stream, and it is not able to hold that stream bank in place when there's high flows. So you can see there's massive amounts of erosion. The stream is just, it's cutting out, right? It's widening and it's cutting down, it's deepening. All that sediment is washing downstream. You're not going to have a healthy stream unless you can plant trees along it, right? The grass is not an appropriate vegetation to be up against a stream bank. So other things we do around our properties, right? Washing your car in the driveway, the bubbles run off, the dirt runs off, it goes into the street, it goes in the storm sewer inlet, and that, you can go on any sunny day, walk into a stream, and usually you can find bubbles in the stream in the spring, summer, and fall. Someone's washing their car. I feel like people are really more responsible, but if people don't scoop, the dog waste, it can create a bacterial and nutrient issue in our streets. This is something that irks me right now. It's fall. People are blowing their leaves in the street. They may or may not get sucked up by a truck. That can create problems in waterways. It can dump a lot of nutrients in there when they decompose. Grass clippings are a no-no. To blow or wash them into the street. They can actually clog sewer pipes. They can kind of form like this massive ball and create issues inside sewer pipes. And also whatever's on your grass, and when it decomposes, it's going to create a nutrient issue. Fertilizers, pesticides, whatever we put on our lawn washes off if it's not used up. If you put fertilizer and it rains the next day and your lawn didn't have a chance to use it, it's going to wash away. So we really want to be cognizant of what we're doing on the land and how we're using stuff and what chemicals are out there. If your car is leaking something, right, you can always see those little rainbow sheens in parking lots on a day like today, because people's cars are dripping oil. The other big thing is we're coming up on winter, right? Maybe we'll get winter, maybe we won't. We didn't really have winter last year. We'll see what happens. But it's salt season, right? People are going to start dumping salt like crazy onto their sidewalks, onto the roads, onto their driveways. And then it's going to melt, right? And it's going to rain, and then that salt's going to wash off into our storm sewer system, and then we're going to have salt water in our streams. And our freshwater streams in the Northeast are becoming saltier and saltier every year. Freshwater organisms don't want to live in salt water, so it's becoming an issue that we have to really think about how we can resolve that. Other things we see here is that rainbow sheen we talked about. This is problematic. That's the big pollutant issue. One of the things that people don't think about as a pollutant is sediment. These two photos show sediment. This is that Granarone Mall. They're building a new mall there, and they have this big pile of soil. They didn't have proper sediment control. So all this soil is washing off, coming around in front of the movie theater, and it's going into this inlet, and it's getting dumped into Chester Creek. And so it was a really rainy day. It was a lot of sediment that was being polluted. This is a Wawa that was being built, and you can see they didn't have very good sediment control. Sediment's a pollutant. We don't think about it because it's a natural thing, right? Dirt's in my backyard. What does it matter? There's dirt in the stream. But if you're putting too much dirt, you're going to cover up habitat. There's macroinvertebrates and other things that live in a stream that want to live in between those little rocks, in between those little spaces. And if you clog it up with sediment, they can't survive there. It can, kind of clog the gills of organisms that live in streams. So it's really problematic and is one of the leading causes of impairments to urban and suburban streams, all this sediment washing off. It can really choke out habitat and the things that want to live there. And litter, this is a stage photo. But if you dump it on the street, it's going to wash or blow into our streams. Every year, there's usually stream cleanups, and you'd be amazed, especially at the bottom of the watershed. If you go to a stream cleanup towards the bottom of a watershed in the floodplain, it's amazing what washes down from upstream into the bottom part of the watersheds. And so here we go. Oh, look at that. That's the American ideal, right? Oh, look at that. Luscious, green, not a weed to be seen. So this has obviously habitat issues. Turfgrass is not native to North America. It's not going to really give you much benefit for any kind of other species. But water quality wise, like we talked about, it's not really soaking up as much water as if this was planted in something else. Chances are you're going to put a lot of fertilizer on it to keep it green. You might over fertilize it. It might run off into our waterways and create an issue with too many nutrients in our waterways. There's not a weed to be seen in here, so you're going to use chemical herbicides probably, which again, they can wash off into our waterways. And then your lawnmower doesn't have a catalytic converter on it, so they actually create more air pollution. I don't think this person's using one of those old push mowers. I think they're using a tractor probably. But this is, environmentally speaking, this is really not what we want to be seeing here. This is not good for water quality. This is not good for habitat. Make it a meadow, plant probably 100 trees or something, put some shrubs in there. It's going to be much better for what we're looking for. Obviously, we're not going to get rid of all of the grass, right? I have kids. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It's essential that they can go outside and play. I will confess, though, I don't have like the most luscious lawn. It's basically whatever grows out there that I mow down, right? I try to keep my front yard looking a little bit nicer just so people don't, I don't want to get too judged that my lawn is just weedy, right? So again, grasses don't infiltrate water that well, but if you mow it higher, so we mow our grass at 3 inches, it can shade out the weeds and it develops a much more vibrant root system. You do have to mow it a little bit more frequently, obviously in the summer when it's growing rapidly. Get a mulching blade, that's free fertilizer, right? Don't bag your clippings. One of the biggest things you can do for your lawn and anywhere you want to grow something in your yard is to test your soil. Every county has an extension office. For Penn State, I think it's $9 to have a test kit. They will tell you how much nitrogen, how much phosphorus, and what the pH of your soil is. And that's super important because if your pH of your soil is off, you can dump 10 pounds per foot of fertilizer. You're not going to get it to grow. If you can, try and buy organic fertilizers. They're pretty readily available now that you can find them. If you're going to water your lawn, water it longer and less often. If you mow your grass higher though, you're not going to need to water your lawn really that much. Except this last June. That was a pretty rough month. To break up that compaction, aerate your lawn. It's too late in the season now to do that. Your grasses are really going to recover because it does tear your lawn up pretty intensely. But it breaks up that compaction. It allows your lawn to become more lush and to develop more. And you can kind of like top dress it with compost and put some more seed down, and it really kind of comes back as a more vibrant lawn. And never ever put grass clippings or leaves in a stream. This is a picture at the bottom. This is a lake. It's a shot from, I think it's from somewhere in Delaware, where too much fertilizer was running off from people's lawns into this pond, and it creates this problem we call eutrophication. There's too many nutrients causing this massive algal bloom, and the pond is just kind of really yucky. That situation I was talking about, the first pictures with Little Crumb Creek, that it dumps into a lake, right? It's they dammed up Little Crumb Creek and they made it into a pond. It also has a problem with too many nutrients washing off from people's lawns that can cause. They had a big algal bloom, I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago. And then when the algae dies, it decomposes, it uses up all the oxygen, and it killed every single fish in the lake this one summer. And so they actually had to go in and put a bubbler system in the lake because they're having trouble stopping the nutrients from coming in there and keeping the algae from growing. And so it's kind of like a big aquarium now, basically, to keep the fish alive in the summertime. So here's the test kit. I'm only familiar where Delaware County's extension office is. I'm not sure where Montgomery County's is, but I'm sure Amy or Maureen will probably know. It's $9. I highly recommend, your soil is the basis for everything that grows in your yard. So understanding how your soil is important to getting things to grow without having to rely on too many chemicals if you don't have to. I'm going native, right? Native plants have really deep roots, right? And they're going to create conduits, pathways for that water to get down into that groundwater, like we talked about. They're going to create decent ground cover, right? They're going to grab onto that water and create more evapotranspiration, put the water back up in the atmosphere. They're going to they're going to do better at preventing runoff than your lawn is. And so every year I try and gobble up a little more lawn in my front and my back and plant it with native plants, just because I know the absolute benefit that they are. They're working, they're doing work for us, right? They're doing a service for us for water quality. They're doing a service for nature. They also don't require a lot of fertilizers or pesticides. And once you have them established, they don't really need to be watered. My backyard is mostly all native plants at this point. It didn't rain at all, I think, this past June. I didn't water them at all. None of them died. So they're established, they're pretty hardy, and they're very pretty to look at. And I haven't cut anything back either. There's this whole push to kind of be a lazier fall gardener, to leave them there. They provide ground cover, they provide seeds, they provide places for insects to grow on the stalks. And so really important to kind of not be so fastidious with your fall cleanup. I know that the Merion Conservancy has some great speakers about native plants, so I don't want to go too in depth. There's also some great books by Doug Tallamy. DCNR, the state DCNR has a lot of information about native plants. So they're really, really good. So you go like this. This again is sort of an area, this big lawn, devoid of life, it's not working for you, it's not working for nature, right? Where look at this guy's all like, oh, my Saturday, I have to go out and cut the grass. And this lady down here, look how happy she is. She's planted all these native plants. She doesn't have to go buy fertilizer. She's not cutting her grass. She has pretty birds and butterflies and insects, and then she can cut them and put them in vases in her house, and she's so much happier. This bottom situation is working for nature. It's doing a service. We call it an ecosystem service. It's providing a needed thing for everything that lives in that area, for all the living beings. It's doing them a service. And so we really want to see that. We want to try and do a little bit of that in little pockets in our yard. And again, these roots grow really deep. This is grass roots. These are the roots of native plant systems, really deep. And it creates those little like conduits for that water to go down. It helps it to infiltrate deeper into the groundwater, which is where we want that water to go. It prevents it from running off. It really grabs onto it and sucks it up. And that's what we want to see happen. And they're pretty, right? They look prettier than grass and they require less work. So I'm all for that. All right, some things we want to think about though, in your yard, in a municipal park, anywhere you might want to go walking, is we want to look out for invasive species. These can be problematic. This is a picture of Japanese knotweed, which is a bamboo species. It grows along almost every creek in Pennsylvania at this point. The problem with this is it's not very pretty to look at, but it also dies back in the wintertime, which leaves banks exposed to erosion. This one's garlic mustard. The one below that, the one with the yellow flowers, is lesser celadon. These are kind of taking over the floor of woodlots, the bottom of the woodlots, creating, choking out sort of native plants that would be there. This is multiflora rose. I mean, this stuff is just it's like a giant thorn bush. It's really challenging to get rid of. But definitely if you're going to touch it, have gloves on because it's pretty prickly. Same thing with this is Milominate, very prickly. These things can kill trees. This Milominate, this is bittersweet, can kill trees, which is problematic. The other problem with some of these is that they're like, especially the bittersweet, they're from Asia and they will be harbingers of the spotted red lanternfly. So I have some of this in my backyard. I had to clip it back. It was covered in the nymphs this spring. So just be on the lookout for some of these invasives that might be yummy food for the lanternflies. So other things we want to think about, we want to rethink some of the ground covers and plants that we can get at the big box stores. This is Vinca vine. This is English ivy. This is my nemesis in my backyard. I shall one day conquer it. I'm going to be hopeful and keep positive thinking there. This is butterfly bush. I know butterfly bush is a lot of nectar for butterflies, but it's not what we call a host plant. And so it's not going to actually provide food for the caterpillars. You don't have the caterpillars, you don't have the butterflies. And these guys, these ground covers, they'll kill your trees, especially English ivy. It's a nightmare. And they'll just choke out other better species that are doing more work for nature around here and that are creating more better water quality situations. So just because you can buy it at the store doesn't mean it's necessarily the best thing. Really kind of look into those native plants and think about what they are and where you can find them and what they'll do for you. All right, this is my big sell, right? Trees. We got to start loving trees more than we love trees. I know. A couple years ago, a big tree fell in my neighborhood and that big ice storm we had in March, and I lost power for an entire week and it was miserable. But I forgave the tree. All right, I forgave it. I was like, it's okay. It's okay that I was freezing cold in my house for a week and my kids didn't have Wi-Fi. We survived, right? All these big trees are coming down and no one's replacing them. We cannot have healthy water quality if we don't have trees. It's never going to happen. Trees are vital. They suck up so much rainwater. They also, along a stream, provide essential shade. They cool that stream, right? Temperatures can get really hot in the summertime. If you don't have trees along a stream, the water's going to get too hot. And things like trout and other temperature sensitive species are going to die off and they're not going to be able to come back unless you can cool the stream down. So, I mean, they're just perfect for water, right? They catch it in their branches and then they're just designed, right, to take that water and direct it right down into the ground, which is where we want it to go. And so we need not just little medium-sized trees, we need bigger trees. And if they're not going to fit on individual properties, we need to put them in our parks. We need to line our streets with them if we can. We really, really, really need trees. I mean, besides water quality, they provide so many other benefits just for nature in general. I hate to take my kids to a playground that doesn't have trees around it anytime between, say, May and the end of September because it's like a bazillion degrees out. But trees are really great to keep things cool. I get it, they fall and they can create a nuisance, but the benefit that they give us is essential. And so, we kind of have to overlook that they occasionally create some problems. Also, I get it, like there's leaves on the ground and that's, I guess, creates slippery driving conditions for sure in this kind of weather. But I mean, we really, really have to have trees and we need to have trees along streams. This is a stock photo off of EPA's website. You can see this stream is just kind of a hot mess. And they came in, they did some restoration work, but they planted trees along it, right? We want trees. We need to have trees along our streams so they hold those stream banks in place. Their roots are like claws grabbing onto that soil and keeping that soil from washing away and keeping that stream from kind of moving around too much at a time. You can start out slow by no-mow zone, right? But again, you have to watch out for invasives. If you just stop mowing, they're going to be like, oh, look, it's like perfect land. Let me go in there. The wider your buffer is, the better, right? I think 100 feet is ideal. Obviously, in a really developed area, that's not going to be something that happens, but the wider, the better. This stone along a stream is not ideal. Obviously, in an urbanized situation, there's going to be stone along streams at some situations, right? Especially in the outside of a curve where the water is like coming and has the most force. You want to protect it. Maybe there's infrastructure like a sewer line nearby, but you don't want to see the whole stream bank covered in stone. It's not a good situation for that stream. This is a sign that used to be in Little Crumb Creek Park in Swarthmore Borough. They had planted trees there. Somebody stole it. But anyway, it says, these trees are working for us. Let them grow. We need them here. They've been planted intentionally to help us with a multitude of environmental needs, one of them being improved water quality. These are some high school students that came out. This was all invasive species along this creek. It was removed, and then a native you know, palette of native trees and shrubs, and seed mix was put in there. This is having some trouble with invasive species. So anytime you do anything to disturb the land, especially near a stream where there's lots of water, you want to make sure that you're looking out for those invasive species. And down here, they just stopped mowing and they planted some flowers. This is better than nothing, right? They really help to hold the stream bank in place. They spread out the flow of water that's coming over the land, right? So reduce some of its energy. And they can help kind of filter out some pollutants, not all of them, but some. And so I think there was a study by the University of Maryland that says something like we need at least 60 or 70% tree cover in a watershed to have healthy streams. So we're really far from that. So we really need to work on, you know, planting trees wherever we can. The Stormwater Collaborative just this recently, you know, instead of giving away like, you know, sort of disposable stuff, we started giving away trees to residents in the effort to just really get them to, you know, put trees on their property, to embrace trees, to show their neighbors how great trees are. We're always putting more trees in the parks when we can, everywhere we can, tucking them in wherever we can, and really kind of to get the, you know, to get that canopy cover up to where we need it to be. This is a stream with a healthy riparian buffer, right? That's what we call those trees along a stream. You can see it's deeper, it's cooler, it's got better habitat, the stream banks are stabilized. And once you take that away and you vegetate it with just turf grass, which is what we see at a lot of parks and a lot of private property, it's wider, it's warmer, it's got a silty bottom, there's less stuff that's going to live there, and it's eroding. It's widening out and cutting down deeper, and it's just creating a really not healthy situation in the near term, and problems probably for that house in the long term as the stream keeps cutting in one direction. Say you do have a house and you have a stream and you want to, you know, you don't want to lose your sight views to the stream. That's fine, right? You can plant the trees, the overstory trees will grow up, you'll have some understory trees, you can put some herbaceous material down there, and then you can mow pathways into it, so you can still have access to the stream. There's a park down in the lower part of Darby Township along the Hermisbota Creek where we've killed all the knotweed, and we're going to replant it with a native riparian buffer. We're also going to make sure that there's a way that people can have access into the water, that they can get down there into the creek if they want to. So it's not sort of an all or nothing. You can design it and make it in a way where you can still see the creek, you can still get access to the creek, but you're doing good for the creek with what you're putting on it. So here's the thing, right? This is our cartoon for the night. I chopped down all the trees and all the soil and water rushed off the hillside and into the stream and everything was destroyed. It's not my fault. It was the nature that made all the rainfall. But in reality, if we didn't chop down all the trees, then all the rainfall wouldn't have washed off the hillsides. It wouldn't have put this giant volume of water into our creeks, and we wouldn't have destroyed all of the land and the property, and people might not have died. We really have to sort of realize that we have to work with nature to help us with some of our flooding issues and our water quality issues and sort of quality of life issues, that, you know, these things are our friends and they're helping us out, and we need to really keep that in mind. I'm not gonna lie, every time we get a big storm coming through, I'm not like gonna hear the trees creaking in my neighborhood. I might be sitting in the corner like, please no, not this time, right? Because I don't want to lose power, but I know they're great for my house in the summertime because I really have to run my air conditioning, so that's a big benefit. All right, so let's delve into it. Besides trees, trees are kind of like this all-encompassing super duper benefit for water quality. There's other things we can do at our properties to sort of green them up, right? We're all going to have grass. We're not going to get rid of all of it because it's just there's no other kind of vegetation that's going to be as durable as grass is to be able to walk on. I mean, you can replace it with sedges, but you're not going to be able to walk on them like you can with turf grass. But we're all going to have a driveway or a front walk or a patio. We're all going to have some kind of impervious surface. So if we can, when we're redesigning them or rebuilding them, if we can think of that differently, right? They do make porous asphalt. It's a little bit more finicky. It takes a little bit more to maintain it. You have to vacuum it. You can never get like mulch delivered on it because you want to make sure you don't clog up the spines, clog up the pore space. But it does, you can see this is a more arboretum. It does let water go right through it. But there's other things like these paver blocks. This is great if you have a situation where you have overflow parking, where you're not going to be driving on it regularly, you know, for like a shopping center or something, or if you have like a driveway and then like Sometimes you have a second car, this would be good. There's porous paver blocks. A lot of these porous situations for driving are not good for like the regular, cartway, which is why the more arena the driveways are regular asphalt. Where you park is porous asphalt. There's a lot of state parks in Maryland where you drive is asphalt and where you park is paver blocks, porous paver blocks. So just lets the water go through. You're getting that infiltration, which is what you want to see into the ground, and it reduces runoff and increases groundwater recharge. So rain barrels. Rain barrels are kind of like the first you get your tree, right? You get a tree, and then you can get a rain barrel. And a rain barrel is kind of like your gateway into bigger types of GSI. So this is, it's going to hold 55 gallons, which is what these hold. So it would have filled up today, maybe overflow today. But you're going to stop some of the runoff. You're going to have a source of water for watering your garden and other things you might need. You're not going to drink it, not going to bathe in it because you don't know what's on your roof. But it's sort of like a way to remove small little sips of water. But that's great because if everyone removes a small sip of water, that turns out to be a giant gulp of water, right? We have to think of this as, sometimes it seems futile, right? Oh, what can I do? I'm just like this quarter-acre lot. But if you do it and you get 10 neighbors to do it, that's a huge impact, right? And even a little sip that you take out is better than nothing. And so we really have to kind of think of it that way. Slow, gradual changes. Really kind of catching on now are these downspout or flow through planters. So it's kind of like a rain garden or a rain barrel with plants in it almost, or like a raised rain garden. So this one on the left, these are along Darby Road in Haverford. So there's about a foot or two of soil on the top, and then the bottom has like void space with stones or something else in it so that the water filters down through the soil, picking up any kind of debris that might have pollutants that might have been on your roof. The plants take up some of the water and the rest is held and slowly released from the bottom, right? And so you're slowing the volume of water and you're absorbing some of the volume of water. Oh, I went too fast. So these are the ones that we've been building for the collaborative with help of Lower Merion Conservancy. So they're made out of their metal galvanized steel, like feeding troughs that we buy at Tractor Supply. And so, the newer ones we built, they have this sort of perforated PVC held up by a PVC pipe. So the water comes down through the plants and the soil medium, and it's just a place to store it. And then you can slowly release it, and you're slowing that volume down. So this is great for areas where your gutters come down on a paved surface and you can't put in a rain garden, or you don't have a use for the water in a rain barrel. This one in this picture, this is at a row home in Upper Darby down by 69th Street Station, where there's nothing green at this house. There was nothing green at all. And so there was no other way, nothing to do with the stormwater. So now the whole front of her house kind of filters down through this downspout planter and slows down the water, absorbs a lot of the water and reduces the runoff in what is a heavily urbanized area. So those are kind of the sort of simpler, kind of easier things. The bigger things that kind of have, I mean, those are great and they have really great water quality benefits. But rain gardens are sort of a little bit bigger of, I don't want to say an investment, but a little bit, I'm just, as having built like 50 of them with shovels and wheelbarrows, they're a little bit more time consuming to put together. So these are basically, you're like gardening down, right? Where you see most gardens are kind of raised up. These are bowl shaped. Sometimes they're really deep, sometimes they're not that deep. The ones that we have built with the Stormwater Collaborative and through Have a Rain Garden are really simplified. These can be as complicated as you want them to be, or as simple as you can get them to be. And so through Have a Rain Garden, we make sure the native soils that are present on the property will infiltrate water. If they infiltrate water, then we can put a rain garden in there and you're good to go. It saves thousands of dollars. So this is at a library. I actually have some photos in the next slide or two about how this was built. But they're great, right? You're mimicking nature. You're taking water from impervious surfaces and you're putting it into this bowl-shaped garden, right? So it's coming off the roof of this house, or maybe it was going right into the street, and it's going into this garden. It's collecting into the garden. It's planted with deep-rooted native plants. The plants are sucking up a lot of the rainwater, And they're also creating conduits for that water to go down into the ground. So it's recharging groundwater just like it would have done before we developed it. So once you kind of get the hang of how they're built, they're really not that complicated to design or that complicated to build. It's just a matter of the labor. So here's the one. This is the Yaden Library before we put the rain garden in, right? So Yaden is kind of at the bottom of the Cobbs Creek watershed, just on the edge of Delaware County. The other side of Cobbs Creek is Philadelphia. So we had the Public Works help us, right? They were out there with their backhoe because it's pretty large. It's about 600 square feet rain garden. So we took, there's a gutter here and there's a gutter just off this shot that comes down and was piped all the way under the front lawn and directly into the street. So the runoff from the roof was going into the street, discharging into Cobbs Creek and creating a lot of water quality issues, right? So the Public Works helped us to pipe them into this area and we excavated it. So it's kidney bean shaped. That's just kind of what they want it. You can make whatever shape you want it to be, but these are kidney bean shaped. And then we got volunteers to help us plant it one nice day, right? We made sure we put some trees in there because trees, again, really important, want to have trees. And it's planted with native plants. And so this is what it looked like after the first growing season. Not too bad, right? Things are coming in. I'm not going to lie, it's a garden. This is on a public property. Public Works guys are not necessarily gardeners, so there's a little bit of a challenge sometimes. So what we've worked on, you know, kind of giving them guidance and training on what to look for. We also bring volunteers out. This is William Penn School District. Their 9th grade building is just catty corner from here. And so we've worked with some of the teachers to bring the students out to help us weed it and maintain it. This is what it looked like this May. So this is just after the irises bloomed. We did have some problems with some weeds getting in there and killing off some of the plants. So we replanted it, but you can see how nice the trees are doing. This gets really great blooms. Everyone's really excited about it. They like to walk by and see the rain garden. And of course, we put some educational signage up there. So this is, you know, it's one, water quality benefit with the rain garden and the trees, and 2, we have that sort of educational, and 3, it's beautifying the community, right? It's adding some beauty and garden to the community. People like the butterflies, they like the birds, they really like the fact that they have that going. And we just won, this garden just won a PHS gardening award, so good for all the people who help maintain it. But this one, I say it fills up, like this is at Morton Borough Hall, it fills up, right? This is taking a third of the Borough Hall roof. There's another, this is rain garden was built and then a second rain garden was put right next to it. So the whole roof now goes into rain gardens where before it was pumped into the street. It, on a hard rain, it will fill up. I mean, the first rain after that Yaden rain garden went in, the head librarian called me in a panic saying, oh my gosh, there's a swimming pool out front and it filled up. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's not working. I said, did the water go away? And he's like, oh yeah, it did. I said, well, that's the point, right? It's going to fill up. Maybe it's going to be a little bit terrifying at first, but it will infiltrate into the ground, and that's what we're looking for to happen. This is one that went in at an elementary school. So this is one where it was sort of this partnership with the school district, partnership with the borough. This is in Collingdale Borough. The borough does not have any large equipment though. They don't have a backhoe, they don't have a front end loader. And so they worked with a contractor who does some work in the borough who volunteered to excavate this for us for free. If they hadn't done that, we wouldn't have the money to do it. This is the first year after it grew. I will say sometimes there was a magnolia tree in here and then there was a replacement magnolia tree and both of them have been stolen. So we're just gonna keep it as just vegetation, like herbaceous vegetation. This is what it looked like in May. You can see, I think we're getting a lot of deer browse on our coneflowers. Deer really like coneflowers, but the kids help us to maintain it. They help us to weed it out. They've helped us to replant it. It's a nice feature for the community. So this takes all the runoff from their playground, which there's a storm sewer inlet down here. It comes in through this pipe, which that contractor was nice enough to pipe in for us, and it fills up with water. This is another one in a courtyard at a high school. Again, you can make them as big or as little as you want them to be, planted with native plants, providing those ecosystem services, putting the water into the ground. This was flowing directly into a storm sewer inlet and then into the sewer system. These are some of the have a rain garden ones that I'll show you. This is one of the first ones we did. This takes almost this entire house. It's a pretty large house, and drainage systems from her backyard. They were piped directly into the street. We found the pipe in her front lawn. We cut it. We excavated down. You can see there's a berm. So you want it to be level from the back to the front. This is at the same grade as the back of the rain garden. Planted in native plants. Her Joe Pyeweed looks awesome. I love Joe Pyeweed, right? This is another one. It doesn't even really look like a rain garden, but that's actually excavated down. It's gardened down. And so this person, again, is super excited about a rain garden. This is a linear one. This is on Buck Run in Haverford. So the water comes in here. It flows all the way down. It was creating a lot of flooding problems in the neighborhood. And so this has helped reduce some of the flooding problems. This is actually the first rain garden we put in. It's right next to Haverford High School. So it takes a third of her house. It comes in, it's piped out to a swale that's planted in sedge grasses and comes into this rain garden. It's a square shaped rain garden because her kids mow the grass and they didn't want to mow around curves. They thought it'd be easier to mow around squares. Again, this one you can't even tell it's a rain garden, right? Native plants. There was grass here. There's no longer grass. It's actually depressed garden that fills up with the gutters over here. So the gutter comes down, it's pipes, small section of pipe into the garden, then it overflows over here if it fills up too much. So this guy, you can't, I don't know if you can see in the picture, but he ran a PVC pipe along his house. It goes into the rain garden out front. This is also on Mill Road, just down the street from this one was on Mill. There's like 4 rain gardens on Mill Road. So if you want to look at private rain gardens, I recommend going and looking on Mill Road and near Haverford High School, and you can find a bunch. And this one, again, there was too hard to pipe it. There was a walkway in the way, but have a rain garden, even Upper Darby rain garden program. We don't do a lot of piping, and we're not going to cut your sidewalk. We don't have the funding for that. And so we took a hose and we squirted the driveway, got it really wet and watched where the water flowed. And we realized if we dug down here, it would flow into here on this side. And it was crowned enough where it flowed into here on this side. So 2 rain gardens on the side. These gutters were piped directly into the storm sewer pipe in the road. I believe this house is on Darby Road. So the homeowner, again, because we don't have money to do piping, he hired a landscaper to come and cut the pipes and put them into this area. And so now instead of going directly in the storm sewer system, his roof leaders go into this rain garden that's been planted there. And just to show you, again, they do fill up. You can see, this is what we're talking about. If this one home obviously is enough to stop the street flooding, but if multiple people in her neighborhood put in some sort of green stormwater infrastructure, some sort of stormwater management using green systems on their property, this could probably be cut in half, right? This runoff could be cut in half. So again, little sips from little things you do on your property by shifting how much grass you have, how many trees you have. Do you have a rain barrel? Do you have a downspout planter? Are you going to put in a rain garden? Do you have less grass and more native plants? All those things can add up to a big improvement in water quality for your property and for your community. And then again, for everyone downstream, because somebody always lives downstream of where you are. And so you can push a lot of problems downstream. We always see the massive amounts of flooding happen in those downstream communities. And, you know, from someone who works in those downstream communities, we really are hoping people in the upstream communities can kind of help us out a little bit. So that is all I had. That was a lot of information. I hope I didn't go too quickly, but I don't know. I'm here, happy to answer questions, happy to do whatever.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. That was wonderful. We do have some questions. Let me get the chat open. So one question that's been popular, not just in this program, but in our other gardening and sort of outdoor programs, if you have a difficult neighbor who maybe perhaps gets their lawn sprayed by a mosquito blocking company, how would you initiate a conversation with them? Do you have resources? I'm sure you get this question a lot, so I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a tricky one. My neighbor used to spray their lawn, not for mosquitoes, but for ticks, which are a big problem in my neighborhood. And I just approached her and said, you know, not everyone's spraying them for ticks. And just because you spray them in your yard doesn't mean they're not going to eventually come back. You know, and then she had a granddaughter, and her granddaughter would come and play, and she suddenly stopped spraying her lawn for anything because she recognized the fact that it, you know, is not maybe the healthiest thing for people to be around. It is a difficult conversation. It's not one that's easy. It's just sort of maybe slowly picking at it, maybe leading by example. I mean, spraying your lawn for mosquitoes isn't really going to solve the mosquito issue. Cleaning your gutters to make sure you don't have standing water in your gutters, dumping out your flower pots, making sure you don't have standing water around your property is really going to make the big, reduction in mosquitoes. And so maybe just sort of broaching that with them. Yeah, but in the last 5 years, that's become kind of like the hot button thing. Spray your lawn for bugs. It
Yeah, it
is
definitely
frustrating.
is really popular. One of our members on a different talk said that she did sort of do the like printed something out and left it in their mailbox, and it ended up starting a conversation. So, only you all as individuals can judge how friendly your neighbor is, but
Right.
maybe some would be receptive to an anonymous article. Uh, so, okay, we have another one who's asked, they asked about pervious pavement. So could you just really like review that really quickly, just what pervious pavement is? I guess.
Sure. So are they talking about like asphalt or like paver blocks?
So the question is, did she say that there was something called pervious asphalt?
There is pervious asphalt, yes. Pervious asphalt is not a good solution for, say, like a high traffic road, but you can use it for your driveway. It has been used in parking lots. It's a little bit more expensive than regular asphalt. They have to put more stone base underneath of it so that you have somewhere for the water to go. But you can take a fire hose on pervious asphalt and the water just goes right through it. You cannot put like debris on it. Sometimes people get like mulch delivered to your house. You have to make sure that you're not putting stuff that can create fines on it. Like you want to make sure you get the leaves off of it regularly. You're supposed to vacuum it twice a year, because you'll block up that pore space that is created, and then it won't be pervious anymore. But so it's a little bit finicky. Glen Oldenboro just put in a walking trail that was pervious asphalt. They have to shut down the asphalt plant to make the mix, so it's a little bit tricky to sometimes get it mixed up. But it is more readily available now. But you just have to know it's not going to function like your regular asphalt driveway, and you have to handle it differently.
Yeah. So someone asked, I think this was a question sort of to everybody, but oh yeah, has anyone put in a permeable driveway? So if anyone wants to answer that person in the chat, if you have your own personal experience with that, go ahead and answer that person in the chat. So Faye was asking if Montgomery County has a person in a similar position to you. So as I said in the beginning, Eastern Delaware County Stormwater Collaborative is unique to Delaware County. Can we look to someone in Montgomery County? I would say it would be the Conservancy, but
Yeah, I mean, the Lower Merion Conservancy is really doing a lot of what I do in Delaware County. They're doing it for, the communities that they service. And so I think that, LMC is where you want to go locally for that. They have the knowledge and they have the ties to the community and within the municipalities to talk to them. And so locally, I think that's your best bet. There's not a big group of municipalities in Montgomery County working together in the way that the collaborative is, but that doesn't mean that you can't start with what the Lower Merion, like, you couldn't start small like you have right now and expand it out to neighboring communities. It only takes
yeah.
a couple of communities to come together to really create that. But yeah, definitely LMC is a place to go that has the resources that.
So to everyone, I'm gonna put our stormwater projects resources. I just put that in the chat, so you can link to that or click on that. We've got a rain garden guide. We have planting for pollinators information on the public plantings we've done, sort of and beyond. So feel free to check that out on our website. Now, here's a popular question as well. How do people go about getting a downspout planter? So these are kind of rising in popularity. Is it build it your own? Can you order it? How do people get that? And what do they do if they need to build it themselves?
So there are directions that the Philadelphia Water Department put together through the rain check program to build. That's what we use to build those metal ones. They're really not that complicated to build. I will defer to Amy or Maureen on the Conservancy's view on how to get them and what their plans are. I know that the collaborative has partnered with Lower Merion. We put in a bunch of grants. Fingers crossed we get some more money. But it is something you could build yourself. Post-COVID, I mean, maybe we could have some sort of workshop where we build them together. But locally, I defer to what LMC's capabilities are, resources are right now.
I think we're also using or directing people to those kind of standing resources like the water departments, or just encouraging DIY for people who want to figure it out. So we've got a question. How bad is sump pump water that is draining into a stream? My neighbors are doing that. If I put in a rain garden, the water going into it will be constant. So I'm sure the rain garden will contain the water, but they're not sure.
So we did put a rain garden in on Manoa Road in Haverford that had sump pump feeding into it, and the sump pump was going 24/7. We did find that the rain garden was always wet. And so some of the plants that didn't like wet roots didn't like it. And so we had to come back and replant it with different vegetation. But it does take, it's a common thing. We just put one in Upper Darby where it takes the sump pump water. And so you can do that. So it takes downspouts and sump pump water. So I would size it accordingly to the fact that when it rains, it's going to constantly be getting extra sump pump water in there. So maybe make it a little bit bigger, but it's definitely possible to do.
I think that's super cool if people were to pump their sump pump water into that. But yeah, it obviously would have to be almost only water loving plants, not just your kind of widespread natives.
Yeah, because some people, some pumps do run 24/7, but you could also, even just pumping it into something besides grass is better if you don't want to go full rain garden.
Right. So someone asked about drainage. So because of the clay in my soil, I feel like water barely permeates my property. Would a yard like mine still be a candidate for a rain garden?
So I have like a 12-inch layer of clay in my yard. I do not feel like I would be a good candidate for rain garden in my property. We have put them in Haverford where the soil is what we call tighter with clay in it. There's things you can do. You can make it shallower, but bigger, so you can spread the water out over a bigger surface area, so it has more surface area to soak in. You can also dig out like a bunch of the clay and replace it with a sandy soil mix if you want. You can put them in clay soil. Depending on how tight it is. My yard turns in, it's like a lake out front, but it will be gone by the morning. So it would be possible to do. You just have to shape it and size it accordingly to your soil characteristics.
Right.
We like to base our calculations off of the Vermont Rain Garden Manual, which is a free resource online and would help you out with your soil characteristics and how big to make it.
Yeah, so that for everyone who's wondering what that is, that Vermont Rain Garden Guide is like an online PDF. You can Google that, Vermont Rain Garden Guide. You'll be able to find it and access it, print it out if you need to. It's really helpful. And so also one of my coworkers have said that the Conservancy is going to come out with one of our own DIY downspout planter guides. So we will have that for you all shortly, and we're able to email blast out that to like those of you who registered for this event. So it may not be, this week, but, stay posted on this sort of event email chain and we'll get it to you. So a question from Michelle Detweiler, who has led a couple of gardening talks for us. Thanks, Michelle. Good to see you are on here too. She's asked, what are your thoughts on the cost benefit of removing large non-native trees for ecological reasons, but considering they're also stormwater functionality?
Yeah, so that is a trade-off. I would definitely say if it's an ailanthus tree or tree of heaven, I would get rid of it because they're just like a beacon for the lanternflies. But things like Norway maples, it is kind of this trade-off if you have this big mature tree. I mean, I would say leave it until it dies and then replace it with something native, just because it is providing so much water quality benefit and that canopy is really sucking up the water. But tree of heaven, 100% take them down if you can.
Yeah. So just a little shameless plug, everybody. If you want to learn more about spotted lanternflies and how to manage them on your property, I did a webinar in August that's also available on the Conservancy's website. Gives you more information about how to really tackle the tree of heaven problem in your backyard without using chemicals that harm the watershed and the critters in our creeks that Jamie has spent about an hour talking about now. So please don't kill your tree of heavens with herbicides.
There you go. Yep.
So to follow up that tree question, we've got a couple people wondering, what sorts of trees and bushes work well in a rain garden? Can I throw anything in? What should I do?
So it depends on there's different zones in a rain garden. I mean, so you want to make sure that the tree, if you're going to put it in the bottom, can tolerate being inundated with water. Red buds don't like to be in the bottom part of a rain garden, so that one in the Yaden was off to the side and it barely gets water. River birches do well. Their swamp oaks will do well. The Morton rain garden, we put a swamp oak in. There's usually list of plants that, like trees that will tolerate wet roots or inundations of water. You don't want to put a tree in there that's not going to be happy with standing water. And some of the rain gardens, obviously, they're going to infiltrate faster than others. If you have one where the water comes in and goes right through, you could probably put any tree in there. But if you have one where the water's in there for 12 hours or more, you want to make sure it's a tree that can tolerate water. I love a river birch in a rain garden. I love the structure of them. We usually, I don't know, I feel like I put them in every rain garden. Maybe I shouldn't, but I just really, really like them a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think like river birch is a great also kind of comment on aesthetic beauty. Like rain gardens can be really beautiful. I think river birches are, I personally think they're very beautiful. So, for those of you who are on this webinar, you can edit, you can add, if you're looking for a certain color, when you buy your native plant plugs, you can make those choices for your own garden and really make it an aesthetically pleasing space too. So
Right, definitely.
function and form is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, perfect.
So someone had a question about picking plants for water runoff coming off a roof that's going into a shady space. Are there shade and water loving plants?
So if it's deep shade with like barely any sun, you're going to be limited. We've done rain gardens in shade. We've used a lot of ferns. A lot of the sedges, the grasses will, like the sedge grasses will tolerate shade. Some of the, I think it's cardinal flower will tolerate some shade. But if it's really deep shade, like that one rain garden I showed on Mill Row where it was just a front yard, that was a very shady spot. And so we did put a lot of ferns in there, but we also were able to get some flowering plants. I have black-eyed Susans in my front yard. We put them in the dry spots of the rain gardens. They tolerate shade. Kind of like coneflowers don't really like shade. Sometimes it's a hit or miss. Foamflower likes shade. You kind of got to try some stuff out and see. Sometimes you'll find out that it will work in your conditions, but sometimes it won't.
Yeah.
So it's sort of trial and error.
Yeah, trial and error, and that you can always edit. If you have something that you like in one section, but it's not working, but you've got a sunnier spot somewhere else, native plants are pretty hardy, you would say, right? They can be moved easily.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you're finding out it's not working out, put it someplace else and find another plant that will work there. And you'll find over the years, if you go back to some of the rain gardens that have been in the ground for 5 years, the plants are not in the place where we put them. They've all moved around and spread out. And sometimes, new plants have come in from neighboring areas where there was seed stock. And so, yeah, you definitely have to be, kind of flexible with some stuff.
Yeah. So someone asked, when's the best time of year to plant your rain garden?
So we put them in the fall and in the spring. We don't put them in the summer just because it's a miserable time. It's hot to be out there. If you do put it in the spring and we don't have rain in the summer, you are going to have to water your rain garden regularly, especially if you're putting plant plugs in like we do. You're probably going to have to water it every single day. This honestly can be a problem if it's in a public location. It was always an issue of finding water sources. I've always found that the local fire department is always willing to practice their hose technique by watering your rain garden for you. So that's always an option. But yeah, you got to make sure that, if you're going to put it in the fall, put it in before mid-October because you want the roots to get established before we get our first frost.
Yeah, awesome. So the final question is, someone asked if there's also, I know someone asked this for Montgomery County and Lower Merion, but is there someone in Chester County who is also like a stormwater go-to? Would it just be the conservation district?
I mean, the conservation district has a robust program. The Brandywine Red Clay Association, if you're in that watershed, has a pretty robust program as well. You can also reach out. Chester County has a water resources authority. You can reach out to them and ask them if they know of, municipalities working together or organizations that provide this kind of support. They would definitely know.
Great. Thank you so much. So Jamie, those are all the questions. So thank you again so much for leading this webinar for us. If anyone else has one last comment, I'll feed it to you. But again, thank you to our members and everyone who joined us tonight. The Conservancy is a membership-supported nonprofit, so if you are a member, thank you for joining us. And if you're not a member, consider becoming a member online at www.lmconservancy.org/support. Again, we're leading this special this fall that if you gift a membership, we'll plant a tree in honor of your loved one. So that's also available on our website. So thank you so much, Jamie, and again to everyone who came on tonight, and to St. Joe's for hosting.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone. Good night.